Hi everybody. In the last lecture we looked at simple sentences and some common errors. In this lecture we are going to the next step and we're thinking about complex sentences. So we're looking at how to use the type of sentences which will improve your score to a band 7 level and above. Without complex sentences you're going to struggle to get that band 7. Why? Well, that's what we're going to look at first. We're going to think about the band descriptors again. Now, a variety of complex structures. You can see that above. This is an extract from the IELTS Task 2 Writing Band Descriptors under the criteria for grammatical range and accuracy. Band 6 says uses a mix of simple and complex sentence forms. Already, even at band 6, you can see complexity is required. Band 7, though, uses a variety of complex structures. And if we look at band 8, uses a wide range of structures. So quite simply, the greater your variety of grammatical complexity, the higher your score in the exam, at least as long as your accuracy is also high. Okay, so thinking about how to create a complex sentence, let's first of all think about dependent clauses. One of the best ways to improve your complexity of grammar is to use dependent clauses with independent clauses. This creates what is known as a complex sentence. But what are dependent clauses? I have a dog. This is one independent clause. The idea is complete. This is like the simple sentences we were looking at in the previous lecture. I have a dog and you have a cat. Here we have two independent clauses linked by a coordinating conjunction, which is and. Each idea would make sense alone. I have a dog, you have a cat. They both make sense, they're linked with and. Now here you can see a sentence which is incomplete. Although I have a dog, now this is why it's called a dependent clause. It is dependent on another part of the sentence to make sense. The idea is incomplete. It requires the addition of another clause for it to be complete. Let's have a look at that. Although I have a dog, you have a cat. Now we have one dependent clause linked with an independent clause. Here the independent clause is you have a cat. And these clauses are linked by a subordinating conjunction. In this case, that conjunction is although. Now the idea is complete. Although I have a dog, you have a cat. Complex sentence. So the key word here, which turns this into a complex sentence, is although. And this is what we call, as I just mentioned, a subordinating conjunction. So subordinating conjunctions are key to creating complex sentences. So we're going to look at these here. To create a complex sentence, which is a sentence with at least one dependent clause, you need to use subordinating conjunctions. Now, there are many more of these conjunctions than you're about to see here, so I would recommend looking them up after this lecture so that you can get a little bit more knowledge on these. When is a subordinated conjunction? You can see that I've left part of the sentence out of this example. This just highlights the fact that the idea is incomplete. When teachers gave more discipline. There's clearly an incomplete idea here. We need more information for this to make sense. In order to keep children from eating unhealthy food, again, incomplete. Although people who live abroad face some difficulties, unless the government imposes a congestion charge. Even if the government invested in tourism, and before moving abroad. So you can see here that each one of these clauses is a dependent clause. It's dependent on another part of the sentence to make sense. That's what we're going to look at now. Now our sentences make sense. Grades improved when teachers gave more discipline. In order to keep children from eating unhealthy food, advertising should be more strongly regulated. And you can read the rest of these sentences in your own time if you'd like to pause the video. But what I want to focus on here is the ordering of the subordinating conjunctions. If you use a subordinating conjunction at the beginning of a sentence, like in order to, or although, or even if, as we've done here, then notice we will use a comma after that dependent clause and before we begin the independent clause. That's very important, and it's something we're going to return to when we think about punctuation in a later lecture. Now, combining conjunctions. If you want to shoot for even higher band scores, moving up to not just the 7s but above 7.5, 8, etc., then you can think about increasing the complexity of your sentence by combining subordinating and coordinating conjunctions. For example, in order to reduce crime rates, the government should provide greater funding for the police and punishments should be made stricter. In order to subordinating, coordinating, and. Unless emergency services are given more financial support, the number of fatalities will continue to rise, even if other measures are adopted. Here we've got two subordinating conjunctions. Fatty and sugary foods need to be taxed or regulated so that children are not tempted by these unhealthy options. You're beginning with a coordinating conjunction and moving to a subordinating conjunction. So as to protect children who may be influenced by the powers of peer pressure, the government must educate children about the danger of drugs and clamp down on drug abuse by minors. Now this is a very complex sentence. There's quite a lot of things going on here. First of all, we have a subordinating conjunction, so as to protect children, that introduces the dependent clause. This is followed by something we haven't really looked at yet, and that is a non-defining relative clause which uses the relative pronoun who. Don't worry about that for now. It's something we're going to look at later. And then we have the independent clause, the government must educate children about the danger of drugs, which is connected to another clause by way of a coordinating conjunction and clamp down on drug abuse by minors. Okay, so a nice complex sentence here using a mixture of conjunctions. Now just to think about that purple text there, who, as I said, this is what's called a relative pronoun, and it is something we're going to focus on later in the course in lecture 26. So be prepared for that. It's just another way that we can improve the complexity of our grammar and therefore move ourselves up to a band 7 and above. But there's plenty of advice here on how you can do so with complex sentences. Just remember, subordinating conjunctions, dependent clauses linking to independent clauses. Okay, hopefully that gives you a little bit more confidence with complex sentences, and in the next lecture we're going to take a closer look at punctuation and some common mistakes there.